I talk to a lot of folks on my series. I have a series called Breaking into Cyber where it's like I've talked to preachers, I've talked to electricians, plumbers, a lot of untraditional means of how folks got into the industry. I always tell folks to add like 10 new connections on LinkedIn a week when I do mentorships. I'm like, hey, look, go find 3 or 5 people in the field that you want to get into that have your job title.
From a military's perspective, and given your background, how does the browser figure in your line of work in the Army?
Without getting too deep in ones and zeros, I'd say it's still leveraged, I guess, or used. There's obviously some systems that have GUI interfaces and there's some that don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ideally those standalone systems that we're trying to make sure that are isolated. So it's like, just like inside any kind of skiff, right? There's certain rules and parameters and securities that we think of where it's like, hey, no devices can go inside of it. No USBs, no headphones, nothing you can plug in, nothing with a signal. And it's kind of silly, but it's like almost enforcing those physical security aspects to really ensure that the system stayed secured.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about your YouTube channel, and you're also known as GingerHacker. What's the story behind the name?
It's actually a slightly funny, yet very simplistic story. So my friends and I, a year and a half ago, all decided to make YouTube channels. So it's like, yeah, let's make YouTube channels. Why not? And the naming behind it is, and I'm not as tinge red as I used to be as a kid. You can kind of see it within the facial hair. But when I was a kid, I was match red. I was a redhead, bright red hair. And it's kind of turned into I joke that when I went to Afghanistan in 13 to 14, I lost my red and it went strawberry blonde from all the sun. I'm like, oh, I'm a ginger. Ginger will be part of the name. And at the time when I was looking to try and get into cybersecurity, I'm like, oh man, I want to get into pen testing or be a hacker. So I'm like, oh man, GingerHacker. That's the story of how the GingerHacker YouTube was born.
Andrew Crotty, known online as GingerHacker, is not your typical security professional. With experience in law enforcement, the military, and even Wells Fargo, Andrew splits his time between defending federal networks and building up the next generation of security professionals through his rapidly growing YouTube channel. He also founded the GingerHacker initiative to break down barriers to entering the field. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Andrew.
Hey, so glad to be here. And thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's get to know you a little bit better. I'd like to start with an introduction for our viewers. Share us your cybersecurity journey. I understand you pivoted from law enforcement and also are in the Army Reserves now. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so kind of maybe a traditional, untraditional way. So I was in law enforcement for 7 years with the city of Phoenix. I was a patrol officer, a field training officer where I trained recruits out of the academy, and actually left as a vehicular crimes detective. So I dealt with vehicular fatalities, hit and runs, DUIs, and such like that. Now, what kind of interests me to cyber is like I've been playing games and doing stuff on PCs for most of my time back in high school, college as well. And kind of always had that passion in the back of my head, like, yeah, cyber would be kind of cool, but just never really knew the path to go and kind of what to get into. So with the military, I've been in 16 years and I initially started as a military police officer. And then give or take about 7 years ago, I transitioned into an MOS called 35 Fox, which is called an all source analyst. And I was attached to a cyber protection team. Now with that title and position, I kind of got to be like a cyber threat intel analyst where I got to build out the MITRE ATT&CK framework, build out cool presentations and kind of work with the DoDN when we thought very bad state actors had broken into any environments. Fast forward a few more years with some great mentorship and some guidance, knocked out my Security Plus, went back to school for my master's, and went ahead and challenged myself to become a Army Warrant Officer or 170 Alpha, which I am currently at now. And it's been a blast, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's taught me so much. I went back to school to kind of get that educational baseline knowledge of terminology and baselines and maybe some site Python and coding to see what cyber is from my criminal justice degree, so that my degree kind of also matched the passion of what I was trying to get into and kind of get behind.
I see. I think that it's super interesting, like, that you took somewhat of a non-traditional path, right? It sounds like you have, the background and experience in your day-to-day might be law enforcement, but in your Army Reserve career, you're doing a lot of cyber stuff, and of course, in your YouTube stuff, in your YouTube channel, you're doing cyber as well, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But I just did a career day at my son's high school for cybersecurity, and I do think it's interesting that there are a number of different career paths. Like there's traditional paths where today people go to school to go get a cybersecurity degree. I mean, that was not even an option when I was growing up. They didn't really talk about cybersecurity or computers very much, and because I'm somewhat older than you are probably, and but I think that there is that path, and there's of course the military path, right? People can get in the military and go down the right MOS and get into cyber that way. But then there are a bunch of fast paths and non-traditional paths to take as well. So I think that it's super interesting for, I think, the younger people listening to this show, that there isn't a right way. I feel like you're following your passions, and that's getting you to where you want to go.
Yeah, and I talk to a lot of folks on my series. I have a series called Breaking into Cyber, where it's like I've talked to preachers, I've talked to electricians, plumbers, a lot of untraditional means of how folks got into the industry. And it's funny because, like you said, like there's back in the day, or even back probably 8-10 years ago, it's that, oh, you have to get Sec Plus, you have to have IT help desk to kind of start your initial path, you have to know system administration pieces to kind of really notch in. That was the stepping stone to get into cybersecurity. But now there's YouTube Academy, there's LinkedIn Learning, there's Google, there's building your own home lab. There's so many different ways now to really build your own
Mhm.
story and path into getting into cybersecurity itself, whether that's pen testing, GRC compliance, malware analysis, and all those kind of different spider webs of cybersecurity degrees.
There are so many cybersecurity things, right? My older son, he's going to be 29 this year, I think, right? And he he's also in cyber, right? And I remember I was telling the kids on the career day that that I started him when he was like 10 or 11 years old. We were playing with like Kali Linux and doing like little pen testing work, and breaking into, we're more than pen testing, right? Where we're actually trying to break into little Windows hosts and stuff that I had set up for the challenges and stuff. And yeah, but even though his degree's in math, he now works in DevSecOps for a company where he works with the security engineering team, but he does software development for them. So I mean, again, lots of different paths. Um, it's so many paths, but I think there's also so many um, different areas in cybersecurity that I don't think people think about. And
Yes.
and even though we kind of think of like hackers and we think of red team and blue teams, but there's so many pieces. There's governance roles, and there's um people that have to deal with legal and regulators and build policies and those kinds of things. And there's different kinds of analyst roles, and there's different levels of each analyst. And then there's an engineering, and like you were talking about threat intelligence as well. I mean, there's just so many pieces and parts that I think people can find something that they're interested in cybersecurity, coming from very very different backgrounds from for as you were saying, with like people from preachers and electricians and plumbers. I just talked to a contractor a few weeks ago. He had come from general contracting kind of work, and now he's in cybersecurity. I think it's so interesting how people get into the space.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Dakota Snow. He's the bearded IT dad. He has his own channel, but he used to be in construction. He was a construction worker, and then he got into networking. And I think it just goes to show, like, those that like think like, oh, cyber's too hard or I can't get into it. Like, it's persistence and just trying. Like, a lot of
Mhm.
folks also get it's always the question of like, hey, how do I break into cybersecurity? And I'm sure you get this question all the time too. And it's a two-parted question. First off, it's what do you want to do in cyber? Because it's, as we just mentioned, there's so many different paths. And it's like, well, depending on the route you want to go, there's going to be different advice I want to give. But then the second is like, you're going to get told no. So even when I was breaking in, and I might be getting ahead of different questions, but I applied over 100 different places. when I initially was trying to get my first job. I got 101 rejection letters because one place said it twice. And it stinks. It sucks. It sucks when you're trying, you have a strong resume, you're a good candidate. You don't know what's going on. Like, man, well, I thought I did a great job. I smoked that interview, but I'm getting beat out by other folks. I got beat out by an internal hire. And I just tell people, like, don't lose hope. Keep trying. Persistence is key, and just keep applying. Network, grow your network, and just keep building a strong LinkedIn connection to, and kind of like selling yourself and having a good image. Like, do new rooms, continuously learn. I always tell folks to add like 10 new connections on LinkedIn a week when I do mentorships. I'm like, hey, look, go find 3 or 5 people in the field that you want to get into that have your job title, and go add them on your LinkedIn and connect. Shoot them a quick little message. Hey, my name's Andrew, just growing my network into the field of cyber. I'm trying to grow into this next role. I saw that you're currently working it. Happy to connect, and just go start from there.
Yeah, persistence definitely is going to conquer resistance here, right? And I think there's another part to that. One is that, build some skills up, build a portfolio of things that you know how to do, that you like to do. And I think when you're reaching out to LinkedIn folks, I think it's also important to see if you can connect to them in real time, right? In real, not maybe not in real life, because they may be far away from you, but find out what they did to get into it, and find out, get feedback from them on how to kind of get through the process. Cause I think that if you build those relationships and have meaningful relationships, I think that that's going to work well. And I tell this is what I tell my son, because it's I told my son very much the very similar advice that you have, which is, just continue working on it. And, I think it took my son 8 months after he graduated from college to land his first job, but that was his focus, was finding that first job,
Mm-hmm.
and getting into that. And, since then, he's been, I think he started at box.com and went to Microsoft, and now he's at Unity. And he's gotten great experience at all of those companies, but he took a path, and he was, persistent in his application of it. Now I'll tell you, the second part of it is, it's every job that I've had since 1993 has been because of someone I know, right? Because someone knew that I was dependable, not necessarily likable all the time, but,
Honest and hardworking. It's like,
honest and hardworking. Okay. Let me go with that. And, but I think every position I've had since then has been because of someone I know. So I think it's really important that once you get into these positions, that you as a as an employee, right, and as a coworker, that you're making relationships early on in your career, in this career path, that um everyone's going to go off and do their own little things. No one's going to probably stay at the same company for 30 years. And if you are known as hardworking and dependable and an expert, and that you have a good attitude, I think that's an important feature too, and that people want to work with you. I think that your career will take you to many, many different places with many, many different opportunities.
yeah, the advice I give people, so 100%. So I've worked at 3 different, other than the military, 3 different job. I've worked at the state of Arizona, Wells Fargo, and then I'm currently with Leidos working with Department of Homeland Security. And with my first 2 roles, both those roles were by networking. It was by a good friend of mine that was also my mentor, put a good word in for me, got my resume above the stack to sit in it for an interview. But the important thing I also tell people is, it's important to network and also have those connections to get into an interview, but it's your job to be the best candidate. So,
Mm.
because if you interview poorly, which some people can be poor interviewers, it's a bad trait to have, and I always try to help coach and mentor, and practice makes perfect, like we're talking about. That's the way you can get better. Practice with friends, peers, your network, a community, and get stronger with that. Because I know sometimes within this field, there's a lot of introvert IT folks. I'm a unicorn. I'm an extroverted, chatty Cathy IT guy that likes to be forward facing. I like to talk to people, and I enjoy it. I love it. But I also want to go back to what you said for your son, how it took him 8 months out of college. So it took me a year to do my transition from law enforcement into cyber. And I know some folks have the dream of like, I'm going to graduate with my 4 degree. I'm going to get my security plus, and I'm going to have a 6-figure job by Monday. What they don't tell you is that Monday is a year from that Monday. So it's just like, it takes time. And just like you mentioned, like continuously learning and growing and bettering yourself to make sure you're the best candidate is what's going to help get that first role. And then inside that role as well, like you said, being hardworking, being dependable. I have a phrase where I say, make waves in a good way. Be the person that's volunteering for tasks. If an ad
Mhm.
hoc thing comes across your boss's desk and they shoot into the team's message saying, hey, I need somebody to tackle this. Even if you're not super familiar with it, volunteer saying, hey, I'd love to help with that task. I can definitely give it a try, and just try. You're not always going to be successful. You're going to fail, but knowing that you're a reliable person that's willing to take on a challenge, take on that task is going to make you stand out.
I think that if you're not stressing yourself out, if you're not in pain on the next task, you're probably not growing. you know,
Hey, hey,
and
everyone,
you're gonna grow
everyone,
that gray matter. If you're gonna grow
everyone
that gray
block,
matter, it's gonna be a little bit of
everyone
pain.
blocks or shuts down a server in their career. It's part of the whole process. Like
Absolutely.
it's like a rite of passage, right? It's like, oh, I took down a server once and
Yes.
only once.
I've definitely taken out servers before in the most ridiculous ways, right? But yeah, I definitely learned to be careful with command lines and that kind of stuff as a part of it. Well, let me ask you a little bit about your YouTube channel, and you're also known as GingerHacker. What's the story behind the name?
Oh man, it's so funny you asked this because actually last week I was talking with Jordan and Tiffany from Stats on Stats, and they also
I
asked
love
me the
them.
same question. They're such amazing people,
Yep.
and it's actually a slightly funny yet very simplistic story. So the reasoning behind of how Ginger Hacker came around is my friends and I a year and a half ago all decided to make YouTube channels. And it was kind of just like, oh man, if Mr. Beast can do it, so can we. So it's like, yeah, let's make YouTube channels. Why not? So as we're all going through, I don't know if you're familiar with what a slap bet is. So a slap bet, for your audience who's watching, is a stupid thing that young kids do in high school and college where, or in the military, because this has also been done in my military career, where you make a stupid bet like, I bet I can jump over those 5 chairs. Yeah, well, I'll slap bet you. And if you do it successfully, you get to then slap said other person. If you fail said bet task, you are the one being slapped. So my friends and I make these slap bets to make YouTube channels. And the bet was to, if we could get monetized within a year. And the bet ended where he's like, well, if you fail, I get to slap you. I'm like, cool. Well, if I win, I'm going to slap you with the first dollar I make. And yeah, long story short, I didn't get slapped is the good story. And the naming behind it is, and I'm not as tinge red as I used to be as a kid. You can kind of see it within the facial hair. But when I was a kid, I was match red. I was a redhead, bright red hair. And it's kind of turned into like, I joke that when I went to Afghanistan in 13 to 14, I lost my red and it went strawberry blonde from all the sun. So like, I'm now like a strawberry blondish, but I'm like, oh, I'm a ginger. Ginger will be part of the name. And at the time when I was looking to try and get into cybersecurity, I'm like, oh man, I want to get into pen testing or be a hacker. So I'm like, oh man, Ginger Hacker, Ginger Hacker, all one word, no space. And that's the story of how the Ginger Hacker YouTube was born.
It's
With the
great.
name.
I think I saw some of your older videos, and your hair was much red, much more brightly
Brighter. Yeah,
red
brighter,
than
right?
it is
So
right now today in this lighting. But pretty funny that it's a good
yeah,
name. It's a good name.
it's
Um,
it's it's rememberable is what people tell me, because I tell
yeah,
people, I get a little chuckle and I'm like, they're gonna remember it because
absolutely.
it's just a unique name. And then once the channel was made, I had to come up with my niche in a sense of what, when YouTubes are being made. And one thing I thought of and saw even when I was in getting into cyber, I'm like, man, well, there's not a lot of series. Well, there are now, I feel, but of like mentorship and like people sharing their story of how they broke in. So
Mm,
I'm like, you know what? I'll start a playlist or a series called Breaking into Cyber, where I pretty much talk to everyone from like juniors and seniors in college of why they're choosing cybersecurity, from help desks, sysadmins, directors, state CISOs. I've spoken with John Hammond. I've gotten to talk to Jason Dion and just kind of get to hear and share their stories of how they broke in. I've gotten to talk to Jordan and Tiffany. They'll be coming on their video will be getting released later I think probably beginning of 2026. That'll be my first video of the year. But it's just kind of cool to hear people's origin story in a sense. And if that can relate to somebody that's trying to break into the field saying, hey, you know what? I can really relate to how Jordan did it. That's how I want to break in. That's where I think my videos in the series really kind of comes together as a whole, because it's such a great feeling when I get a message on LinkedIn or, hey, I saw you on this interview, I saw one of your videos, I really connected with it, and that's what I want to do, so I'm going to start doing that advice you gave, and it just feels great.
That's good. That's good. I think that it's like you said, there's lots of different ways to get in from lots of different places, um, different backstories, and it's I mean, when I got into cyber, it was a complete mistake. I just didn't even know I was getting into cyber at the time. But
I thought
there I
this was the
was.
line for the cafeteria. No, man,
Yeah,
this is the
exactly,
IT
exactly.
office.
It wasn't that bad, but it was similar. But anyways, I think it's good for people to know that there's uh, wherever they are, that there's a path, right, to
Yeah.
whatever you want to do. Not necessarily cybersecurity, but whatever. I think, but again, it comes down to persistence conquers resistance, and build that network and build those skills. Get good at interviewing, and because I think that's a big part of it too, is just being good at interviewing. I think doing the interviews build skills, because when people are looking for that L1 analyst, they're going to be asking those same questions again and again and again. You'll get better and better at answering them, especially as your skills kind of come up along the way with it.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about mentorship a little bit. And about you're also part of DEF CON's Noob Village, right? Which is a word that my younger son says all the time. He's always calling me a noob about something. Um, and I guess the Noob Village introduces newcomers to the hacking community. What's the biggest misconception newcomers have about getting into cybersecurity, and how do you address that?
Man, that's such a good question. And shout out to Josh Mason. He is the founder, creator of New Village. And it really came around to having that community and room or area where it's like, if you're brand new to DEF CON, if you're brand new to cyber, and like you really don't know where to start or go, you have maybe some might call silly or stupid questions you want to ask but could be embarrassed about asking. It's kind of just that safe place to kind of come and ask those questions. Hey, what's a SOC analyst? Why is everyone telling me to be careful about pineapple at DEF CON? Like, what is that? Is it a fruit? Is it some type of cyber thing? Hey, do I have to be good at coding? Do I have to know Python? Do I have to know Linux? And being able to explain to folks that, hey, look, there's so many different avenues and approaches to break in, or those wanting that mentorship or kind of community that they can't find wherever they're from. It's kind of just like that refuge. And Josh did such an amazing job this year, and we're so excited for the next year for DEF CON 2026 to have more room, more speakers, more entry level paths, more acceptance on a sense of getting folks to come in and ask those questions, to be vulnerable, say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, I need help, can you guys help me? Because I think this can be in many fields. It doesn't have to be related just to cyber. Sometimes I think folks think looking for help can be like a sign of weakness, and I don't
Mm.
think it is. I think it's a sign of humility, because you know and I know within both your amazing decades of experience and my 1 decade of experience, we're going to come up with the things we don't know. And what happens is, when I find something I don't know, I'll do my research and my own digging to find a solution. But if I can't find it, I'm going to go ask someone that might know. And that's going to come down to my network, my coworkers, mentors, those that have been in the industry that have that tribal knowledge or that experience that I just don't have yet. And it's sharing that information and sharing it in a positive way, not downgrading somebody or talking down to somebody, but being a good teacher and allowing folks to learn through that kind of methodology. And that's kind of what New Village is. It's just that fun, good community where folks can come learn and ask those kind of silly questions where they can help and get mentorship.
Well, I think that's great, because I think that at least in the United States, having gone through the school system here and getting through college, and watching my sons go through it, we really teach people to work as an individual, right? And that, you're graded on your individual work. And I think people get into that habit, and I don't know if this is my thinking about it. And but when you get into the workforce, right, and you're starting to work with people, it's hardly ever you have individual work, but you're not actually an individual. You're always working in teams, right? You always have someone else that
Yep.
you're working with, or you have, there's people that are maybe doing something before you get your piece of work, and then after you do your piece of work, you're delivering it downstream to somebody else, right? There's but and but we're working as teams. And I think that the first time that I was in school, I did my master's degree as well, and that was very much cohort driven, and everything was done as teamwork, teams, right? With the idea that, um, and we did this exercise in it where any group is going to beat any individual, right? You can have the smartest person in the world, you ask them a bunch of different questions, and they're going to score um, so many points on a test, let's say. But you bring a group in together and they all have different interests and different backgrounds and stuff that they learned in different ways. And then you take that same test and that group is going to work. They're going to have a higher score, right?
Hmm.
So even the exercise we did was that the lowest scoring group, right, always beats the highest scoring individual. And I think that is something that we're not really, I don't feel like we're teaching in school, and I think that bleeds into, it bleeds into, the workforce and people's feelings about how do they succeed or fail. It's not and then gosh, and people hated failing and getting Fs on their
Yeah.
report cards and stuff. So we kind of build in, especially I think in the United States, this idea that, that, that success, that failure's not good, right? And people are embarrassed about it. But I think that if you don't fail, if you're not failing enough, then you're probably not trying hard enough. And that's
Hmm.
something I learned, skiing with a friend of mine as an adult learning to ski. Um, this, one of my good friends in Austin told me, if you don't fall down at least 10 times going down this slope, you're not trying hard enough. Right.
Oh man. If we're gonna stick with snowboarding references or like skiing
Yeah.
references, when I was learning to snowboard, the advice I was given, hey, if you go down the double black diamond, the rest is easy. So when I was learning how to snowboard, the first run we went down was double black diamond.
Wow.
I went over head to butt the entire time down. I fell for about 30 minutes. We get to the bottom. I was like, all right, man, let's go hit the blue square, which is like a lower difficulty one.
Sure, sure.
Did it without knees, didn't fall once. He's like, see, told you the rest is easy. And that's kind of like cyber. You're going to fail. And the failure is not a bad thing. I think within cyber, like, you want to fail on some things because one, it shows you where improvement can happen. And it also shows you're trying. Like they say Einstein and all the other things, like it took him X amount of times to make the light bulb. And same thing for other rough drafts for the Constitution. Like things take time and practice. There's the 1% chance of a one and done perfect run, but some things take time and also take multiple repetitions. So 100%.
Yeah. And yeah, for sure. I think that the kind of going back to it, right? It's just you're, take the I think the other part of that is taking feedback well, right? It's okay that you didn't make an A. And I mean some of my people that worked for me, um, we would have them do analyst, an analysis work, like investigate an incident. And then every week they would come in and tell us what they saw and what they did. And then me and the other, um, you know, SOC managers and level 3 analysts would grade their work and give them an A, B, C, D, F, and that kind of stuff. And then they would ask us feedback. How come they got a C? They thought for sure it was a B or an A, and then we would tell them what they missed and stuff. But being able to gracefully, I think, take feedback is also a skill, right? I mean, it's a
Hmm.
gift. I mean, if you have someone that's taking the time to um, give you feedback, don't take it negatively, right? I mean, understand that what do they say? Hate's not as bad as um, it's not disinterest, but not caring at all, right? That I'm not affected by someone. If I'm not giving you feedback, then, maybe I really don't like you and I don't care, right? And I think that's probably worse than, getting feedback. So, what do you think about feedback?
Feedback's important, and I mean, I actually strive on this when I do my one-on-ones with my manager, where it's like I could go into every one-on-one and say, "Oh man, dude, you're doing a great job. You're exceeding on everything. You're doing a perfect. Don't change anything." It's like, well, if you do some self-reflecting, sometimes even when I get told I'm doing excellent, I'm top marks. I'm like, well, here's where I think I can improve on, and just what are your thoughts on this? So it's like that's sometimes what I see too when it comes into management, where if you have a manager or a leader or someone that's like always giving you nothing but high marks, do some self reflection and in that conversation say, hey, well, that's great. You think I'm doing a great job. I very much appreciate that. But then say, but however, this is where I feel I'm kind of weak in right now. Could you give me some feedback on how you think that work's going? And almost like not saying feed the question to that manager in lieu of, but I've had that kind of conversation where it's like there's no way I'm perfect because then that means I'm a robot and I'm not a robot, I promise. So if I am, then man, I'm good. But there's go ahead.
That's great advice. This is great advice. Keep going.
So I always tell folks that when they're having those one-on-ones with their manager or their evaluator or those leads, if you're only getting positive feedback, do that self-reflection before the meeting and find even a good use case. Like, hey, I know we said I did excellent on this case, but actually rereading it, I could have added this extra log. I could have added this extra sentence for clarity or clarification and do that. Like, I know this was greater than A, but I think it's actually greater than B. Like, don't be afraid to kind of like downgrade work and kind of like put a magnifying glass to yourself and really kind of look at everything you're doing. And it's not to say like God forbid it puts you into a negative light, like, oh man, like, yeah, we do have to review some of your work. It's not the intent of where we're trying to get with here. But ideally, it's just like that. It's a good time to sometimes do that self-reflection to bring that to managers or those one-on-one eyes. Cause I've had those meetings where it's like I get told I'm doing nothing but excellent. But then it's like, well, then how come I'm not growing? Why do I still feel like I'm stuck on these certain investigations or these type of rules at fire, or I'm not really familiar with like cross-site scripting or like code injection or this other type of process that I'm being told I'm like fantastic. I'm the SME, but I don't feel like an SME. I feel like a beginner. Like I just put on the hat and now I need to figure out what I'm doing. So,
Well, I think it's great advice because when you're in an organization and you have a lot of people that work for you, and you a lot of times you see the end result, the output, and it may be on point for what it is that you're doing. But I don't see everything. If I'm your evaluator, if I'm your boss, I don't see everything that you do. I don't see your struggles. I don't see that something that you produced took, 27 working hours versus, my expected 3 hours of work. I don't see all of that, right? And I think that, um, if you're coming to me and you're saying, "Hey," and this is what I would love. I would love to see this more often. Is someone coming in and saying, "Look, I was struggling with this. This took me this amount of time, or this is where I was struggling," and you asked me something that I could actually help you with. I think I would feel as your boss, I would feel like I'm actually helping, right? And it could be that you are doing great from my point of view, but if you're having struggles in different places and I don't see it, you bringing it up gives me an opportunity to help, right? And
mhm.
share my experience with you, whether my experience is, you know, a year ahead of you, 2 years ahead of you, or 10 years ahead of you, doesn't really matter. I think that there are problems that I remember having, and this is what I always tell my teams, is like the problems I had when I was growing up are totally different than, the cloud problems you have today. Every problem I have a solution for is like how you rack and stack something in an old data center, not, not just building something in the cloud. So don't look for me for those kind of innovative stuff. But a lot of the problems are the same problems, but how we handle it. But I think it would be great. I think it's great advice. That's like some honestly great advice for people who want to grow and looking for that, how do they get better? Because there's always places
Yeah.
for us to get better. I fail every day and things that I think I do well, I still fumble with sometimes. So it's great advice. I want to talk to you about Ginger Hacker. I want to talk to you about Ginger Hacker Initiative as well. You have a nonprofit focused on getting people into cybersecurity. Tell us one of those success stories, someone who came through your program is now working in the field.
Yeah. So when we were getting ready to launch the official Ginger Hacker Initiative website and such, like, so the nonprofit itself was built in September of this year. But the background and like the process has been going on probably since January. So one of my success stories was actually one of my soldiers that was transitioning from like physical security. He was a military police officer for the military, was kind of like doing a criminal justice degree, and was looking to break into cyber. So very similarly, he was able to transition from his MOS into a cyber protection team and go and become what's called a 17 Charlie, which is like a cyber warfare technician, which is like our enlisted version of what we do. And with that, he learned some amazing, great skills. It's about a 6-month course out in Georgia, Fort Gordon. And he came back and he still was kind of struggling getting into his first role. So we jumped on another call. We worked on getting him his Sec Plus. With the Ginger Hacker Initiative, we are partnered with CompTIA, EC Council, SANS, Dion Training,
Mhm.
and we help leverage them by getting them the training material from Dion Training. We get them practice tests. We do mentorship calls and do kind of check-ins almost on a bi-weekly basis to ensure that they're doing well, they're understanding the concepts. We have those kind of, if there's a specific domain they don't understand, we can kind of have that conversation. And that continued for about 6 months. And after that 6 months, he passed his Security Plus in about 2, was doing interview after interview, was getting further and further along, but then still getting his nose. But then luckily, here about 4 months ago, he got his yes, and we got him to break into cyber. And it goes into little things. So he followed the advice. We kind of gave him some homework, some might say, of like, hey, like, we need you to study. We need you to kind of find time in your day. We get it. Folks are married, they got kids, they have full-time jobs. But sometimes we just ask for, hey, 30 minutes a day, maybe an hour or two a week to really just like turn off the phone, open your browser, go through the material and study and review it. And then same thing with like LinkedIn and resumes, giving the slight tweaks to the resume advice, doing through mock interviews and finding that time during our busy days. Like I know myself, like I was doing my master's in the late evenings. I was doing interviews when I was in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia at like 2 in the morning at Kuwait time to be at the right time for the US. And it's kind of making that small sacrifice. And when I at least went through, and then same for Alex, before we had our scholarship fully kind of funded and going into effect, there's some slight investment that has to happen. And you and I know both know like breaking into cyber is not excessively cheap if you're trying to go the certification route or going back to school. So with the Ginger Hacker Initiative now, we fully sponsor and support and pay for all the training, the CompTIA certification, or the certification you're trying to go after if we can fund it. And that's kind of the nice piece of it where it's like it's completely free. There's no cost, there's no hidden charge. All we ask for is you're in the community. If we do make a impactful career change within your life for this, just share our name. Say, hey, thanks to the Ginger Hacker Initiative, we were able to help break me into cyber. Landed my first certification onto the resume, and just helping the network grow, and then helping other folks kind of get into our community so we can help them find their next role.
Sounds like a great program. Good luck with that. I
Yeah,
think
of course.
I mean, people need help, and it's great to have. It's good to have people in the community trying to help people bring people into community. I think I saw a stat that there was like 500,000, over 500,000 open cybersecurity roles in the United States, right now. And you'd think it would be faster to hire people and get them into it. But I think that, with a lot of those people that are, hiring managers, they have somewhat stringent requirements to kind of get people in. So it's like even though they have
Very.
a job open, doesn't mean that there's still a lot of people that are looking for those roles, and some of them have better skills than others. So anything that can give you a leg up to make you a more outstanding candidate, I think is going to be a good thing for you to take advantage of it. So good luck with Ginger Hacker Initiative.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much.
Yeah. So let's shift the gears a little bit. You were just talking um, about browsers and delivering stuff through content through browsers. I think, that's where I kind of like have spent a lot of my time today. Um, with where security is heading, especially with the advent of AI agents and browsers, what should professionals be preparing for that isn't immediately obvious?
Oh man. So AI's here. It's been here for a few years now. And it's as much as every tool now is AI integrated, AI feeds. It's great, but it needs some fine tuning, I think, still. And it's getting better. I mean, you have AI applications like Base 44 or Lovable, where it's like you can now just like type out a prompt for an application or some type of tool and it builds it. Now, I'm not saying it builds it safely or correctly, but it builds it. And I think that's the same thing with AI within work environments, no matter what field you're in, whether that's sales, procurement, government, fintech. AI's here. And for those organizations that allow it, the important piece of it is going to be is how is it going to help your job, not replace your job? So I think there's the big fear that AI is going to replace all these jobs. And to some low level tier jobs, yes, I think it will. But those that learn how to leverage AI to enhance their workload or to enhance their work productivity, I think are going to be fine and safe. And that's where I tell people that, hey, look, you don't have to be a master about how AI works, but you should learn how it can technically maybe help your position and make maybe a annoying task a little bit faster.
For sure. I think that the more experience you have with a particular domain, the better your prompts are for AI. So if you're using AI, if you ask it a really generic kind of question or give it a very generic prompt, you're going to get a very generic answer. It's kind of like how you do Google searches, and the more specific the words are, and the less,
Yep.
uh, the less, what's the word? The more
Refined.
relevant, refined. It's like the if you yeah, good Google searches that really have like very unique words that are very relevant to the subject matter, right? And if you give it those unique words, you get good result sets. If you have a bunch of ands and these and other kinds of words that are extraneous to the subject or are just very generic ways of talking about um, let's say a duck instead of a mallard or just be more specific to the kind of bird that you're talking about,
Yeah.
then you're going to get better results for what you're looking for. And I think that's true for your prompting also, right? Meaning that if you're very specific and you know those domain specific words, then you're going to get better results than if you don't. My wife and I were playing with Nano Banana Pro yesterday, over the weekend, right? And trying to do some get an idea for remodeling our kitchen. And watching people on YouTube do it, and they're using all these kinds of like very specific architectural interior design kind of words, and then they get some incredible results. And I have my really poor language in that domain, and my results aren't as good, right?
I
And I
want
think
a
that
red table.
is
Okay.
it's a red table. But again, I think that that has a lot to do with it. I mean, I think that as a human, your what you learn and how you learn it and your domain specific experience makes AI better, right? Makes it a more useful tool than if
Yeah.
you're kind of using it in a very generic way. And so,
And yeah, a quick example, like, so when I'm leveraging AI, sometimes before I even like, if there's, it's almost funny, I'll like almost put it against each other. I'll go in like the ChatGPT and it's like, hey, craft me a prompt that I want to put into Claude or Gemini or Copilot. And I kind of like, in the best of my knowledge with like my 5 Ws of what I'm trying to elaborate or get out of, and like what would be the most clear, concise prompt I can put into a AI LLM to get the best result for X is what I'm trying to find, or solution. And it does decent. But I mean, like, by that small piece of refinement, just like you said, it's a wide net to a small net. The
mhm.
more wide of a, I want a red table. Cool. You're going to get small tables, rectangular tables,
That's
circle
right.
tables, triangle tables, compared to like, hey, I want a 10 by 10 rectangular table that can sit 6 chairs that is red. And now you just refine what it's going to actually provide you and give you an output for.
Agreed. And so I think that's an important consideration with AI. And I think it definitely will make it better faster. I think there are definitely some threats, as we're a cybersecurity channel, right? Um, and we're seeing, well, one of the questions I always get asked, as a CISO is, well, what if it hallucinates, right? What happens if it hallucinates or it gives you the wrong answer or whatever?
And that's where the human interaction is not going anywhere.
That's
So,
right, exactly right. I mean, I think that's where we apply our critical thinking skills and our view as a human to understand whether the output that we're getting doesn't make sense. I mean, I have
yeah.
great humans that work for me and worked for me in the past, and they bring up slides. I remember they just bring up slides, and I kind of have this way of like quickly doing math, and I'm like, oh, these numbers don't add up, and I'm not actually adding it up. I'm just looking at them like it just doesn't make any sense that these numbers would add up to this kind of amount. And I don't know what the exact number is, but technically I can just look at it and say this is wrong, right? I know it's wrong. Intuitively, I know it's wrong. And I think that the and it just because when we're doing this kind of work for so many years, we intuit a lot of what it is that we see. And I think that, again, with experience, you get better at like understanding whether the AI is coming back with an answer that is good or bad. And I think that's where I think the human element, like just like you're saying, it just kind of comes to bear, is that it's that's great that it's doing things and it's making it faster, but we still have to apply a critical thinking hat to it to make sure that it's pushing us in the direction that we want it to be, right?
Yeah.
And um, and then I know that sometimes I get answers that I'm surprised about, that initially it doesn't feel right to me, but then I'm like, okay, give me your proof points on this, show me give me your background on this. And
Hmm.
sometimes those show me, information that is actually, oh, okay, my perspective on this was actually incorrect. There's actually research that shows that this is the way this is, right? And so sometimes I learn something new, and then, but a lot of times I'm like, I double check some things and I'm like, oh no, there's no background information, a complete hallucination. I'm like, okay, well, let's keep this out of it. But that's part of that refinement and working. And it's just like kind of working with, um, for me, I kind of equate it to working with uh, junior developers or engineers or cybersecurity professionals. They have their point of view, and it has a limited amount of information that's there that they know about. And so it does take some refinement. Even if I was working with a human, I feel like very much the same with AI.
So one of my colleagues calls AI the very eager intern that wants to
Yes,
make everyone happy and pleased, but wants to work really fast and try to get everything done. But that's where QA/QC, so your quality checks, quality assurance comes in, where that's where eyes on screen, fingers on keys are still going to have to be needed to make sure the work's solid and clear.
love it. And then, well, let's talk about browser security from a military perspective. I know that when I was building systems for the U.S. Navy many, many, many years ago, I know on our servers, we couldn't even put browsers on them, right? All of our servers are Windows servers. They couldn't have browsers on them at all, and because we didn't want anyone going to the web, on one of our servers. But from a military perspective, and given your background, how does the browser figure in your line of work in the Army?
Um, Without getting too deep in ones and zeros, I'd say it's still leveraged, I guess, or used. There's obviously some systems that have GUI interfaces, and there's some that don't.
Mhm.
And it's ideally those standalone systems that we're trying to make sure that are isolated. So it's like just like inside any kind of skiff, right? There's certain rules and parameters and securities that we think of where it's like, hey, no devices can go inside of it, no USBs, no headphones, nothing you can plug in, nothing with a signal, and it's kind of silly, but it's like almost enforcing those physical security aspects to really ensure that the system stayed secured. So can compromise still occur on our higher side systems compared to like a web browser, such as like in like a business office or maybe inside of a like the PX. You walk into the PX, there's still machines and computers that one could simply walk into if it's not attended to and plug something in and compromise a network. Yes, absolutely. When it comes into the higher end systems, there's a few extra, I think, layers of security when it comes into, okay, well, first you have to get through like a badge reader. Then you have to get into a code pinned maybe room or a secured room. Then from there, you have to have another ID card that can actually get you into the system. So, or inside to the server, or the door is locked, or there's security guards. So I would say when it comes into like the aspect of security of those web browsers, there's all those different layers of like zero trust, as some like to say, for that the buzzword for 2-3 years ago of like don't trust anybody. No one can get into here. But hopefully that kind of makes sense or answers the question. Because I think I want to say nothing's changed because it's like you said, like, yeah, don't go on the internet. Don't bring your Xbox into this secured skiff to play video games and then jump online so you can play with your friends on Discord.
Yeah,
So
don't do that. If you're in the military, don't do that.
yeah.
But I think that for me, I think the issue and something that I didn't see happening, or I didn't really think about too much when I was doing work with the military and even early into my, going back into commercial is, um, I didn't really, one, I thought it was a pain that they didn't have a browser on servers because I mean, I would have to download software somewhere else and then move it to the server so I could install whatever app needed to be installed. And it was, just one other step that had to go around. But nowadays, I think I understand why we were doing that, right? Which was that, the browser makes things incredibly easy to get to information, and there's all these on the back end. There's all these different apps and code that are running on someone else's server, and then they throw a single page app to your browser. And now you're running someone else's code on your browser,
Yep.
and that code changes, even, I've been on Gmail and I'm saying, hey, they have a new version of Gmail update, right? And you see that with, your, the code's being updated like as you're using it. And we don't necessarily know what that code is and who what third party libraries are in that code that we're running in our system. And we kinda haven't really spent a lot of time figuring out how to secure the browser. I know of incidents that have occurred, um, in, 10 years ago that and 6 years ago, and multiple incidents that I've been involved in, that one of the initial vectors was getting someone to go to a website to download something or put in their credentials, and
Yep.
that turned into a breach somewhere else, right? So controlling what's happening in the browser, we could have been doing this 10 years ago, but we thought that, our EDR tools and our proxy servers and our SASE tools and CASB tools were going to protect us. But you know, less so, right? And I think that like even in like the CrowdStrike and Mandiant reports, like 70% of the breaches by my count are traversing the browser today.
Hmm.
And but from your experience and like what you're looking at, I mean, are you seeing the same kind of thing that you're seeing phishing attacks and uh, malicious code being downloaded through browsers and those kinds of things with the work
Oh
that
yeah.
you're doing?
Oh yeah. GitHub is a gift and a curse, and
Yep.
a huge, I think, push right now too, going off of some like reports from even uh, Mandiant, and then oh man, hold on, I want to make sure I say the name right for this other tool I've been using. Have you heard of Valadin?
No, I'm not.
So you should check out Valadin. Valadin's actually another kind of OSINT tool, and it's OSINT via through like Sentinel One uses it, Wiz, Packet
Mhm.
Watch, and ideally they can have like additional tracking that's happening via through like certain like a big one right now is like office update sites. So it's like, oh, I need to update my printer. And so you can go to like a certain site, and then you think you're uploading you're doing the most recent update, but it's actually a malicious site they're having to go to, think, hey, I need to execute this code to run this command. And Valadin's just a really cool platform that's like kind of like it's an OSINT platform that does some great job kind of tracking different kind of like domains and like other APTs and such that are kind
Yep.
of currently kind of happening and going around. But it's one of my favorite tools I like to use. So, but yeah, definitely just to give them a shout out, because it's like they're I just found out about them like 2 months ago, but it's just kind of a cool aspect where it's like, just like you said, like the browser is very much a fishing pond for bad guys to get folks to go to those malicious sites via through typo squatting. And you Google something real quick, and then you just immediately click the first link that everyone's guilty of because you think it's the best choice, or someone's impatient or just on the spectrum like myself and wants to go and quickly think that, oh, this is the link I need to go to. And then all of a sudden I clicked on a goggle and I'm like, oh, this isn't Google. Uh-oh.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
shouldn't have gone here.
think about your AI your enthusiastic AI intern, you know, and now you've put them in your browser and now you're asking it to do stuff for you. And even you, as a seasoned professional, are going to make some mistakes, just being on the go. That enthusiastic AI intern, he's probably going to make some mistakes too, or she's going to make some mistakes as well,
Yes.
right? Or they're going to make mistakes, right? Anyways, so what? A couple other questions. Can you share what it's like being a technical expert advising Army commanders on cyber operations? What kind of
Yeah.
decisions are you helping them make?
So it's kind of an interesting position in a sense, because we talk to different commands at different levels, right? So think of when you're talking to a C-suite level of a instant response at a business. Not everyone on that C-suite is technical. So can the same thing can sometimes happen when it comes to command staffs, where it's like we'll get sent off to a certain location or a base, and I might be talking to the general or a commander that doesn't sit in a cyber MOS. Maybe they are a field artillery general, or they were an infantry commander, and they have the understanding and the college or the background of like, hey, what's the network? What's the internet? Why is this cyber stuff important? Why is MFA important? And what we get to do is we get to help kind of almost translate what's happening on the cyber battlefront to a physical battlefront, if that kind of makes sense for that kind of analogy.
Mhm.
So what we get to do as advisors is when we're helping our commanders in our team kind of make better cyber choices, where it's like, hey, I'm going to go to Goggle. No, you're not. What you should do is go to Google, or I'm going to click on this link without checking it. Or what you could do is let's verify that link's actually the correct place. Hey, I got these free tickets to Taylor Swift. Before you click on that link, let's verify who that sender was via through the header information. We're kind of like the Jiminy Cricket of making good cyber choices. And as silly as it sounds, that's kind of what advisors do. So even with your CFOs and CISOs in your businesses, you have other folks underneath you that are helping you make those good, strong decisions to strengthen and better your company. Same thing for the cyber warrant officer and what we do within the military. When we are advisors to our commanders, we are trying to be that voice of reason with our evidence and our backing of saying, hey, look, this is why this is bad. Here is all the evidence. This is why this should be blocked. This is why we should implement this block. This is why we shouldn't let folks go to Temu.com or Twitter or TikTok. And this is where all the data is going. And that's why that's bad.
Keep doing good work there, please. Okay, and so in closing, what does your mentorship process look like, and how can our listeners get in touch?
I am available through many different ways. The fastest way is probably by simply just going to the YouTube channel or gingerhacker.org. There we have all of our social links. We have the link to the Discord. If they want to get involved with the scholarship program, that's also where you can apply for a scholarship to have a sponsor your first certification. And yeah, jump into the Discord, drop a message, say that you found us off the SquareX podcast, and we'll add you to the community. And as we drop more and more announcements and mentorship, we can kind of go from there. The mentorship itself, as much as I'd love to talk to the thousands and hundreds of folks that reach out to me every single day, I am merely one person. So I have a rockstar team that helps with kind of mentorships. And we also do the one to many. So we'll do streams, we'll do videos, we'll jump on Discord and just jump in general and do cool kind of talks. Obviously, there's the YouTube channel where I get to talk to amazing folks about their series of Breaking into Cyber that folks can go check out. and ask questions in the comments as well. And I do my best to respond to everything. So
Awesome, Andrew. Thank you, GingerHacker, for being on our show. And good luck. Let me know if I can
uh,
be of help anywhere.
of course, thank you guys so much for having me. This has been great.